Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Double Down, the live news and affairs programme that puts people first. It's Thursday, the 8th of April 2021. We're broadcasting live from Dundalk and Dublin and Longford, and your hosts are Anna Kavanagh and myself, Finbar Markey. Thanks for joining us tonight, folks. I think for most of us, we've had a bit of a shock this week in terms of the weather, with a renewed blast of winter. But hopefully, you're somewhere nice and warm watching us tonight. We're joined this evening by survivors and family members and representatives of the Stardust disaster, Antoinette Keegan, Maris and Phyllis McHugh, to talk about the government's refusal to fund their legal representation at the inquest into the fire that took the lives of 48 young people back in 1981. We'll also be looking at the news that you won't see on TV, and Anna Kavanagh will be examining her chosen news stories of this week. But first, the news that you won't see on TV in Ireland or around the world. In Irish news first, reports that Taoiseach Leo Varadkar has been forced to flee his home as a result of threats from far-right groups have been proven false. The report was carried in much of the Irish media over the weekend, but it appears now to have been pulled by those same news outlets when it was revealed that Varadkar did not move home as a result of threats. Last weekend was the third weekend in a row in which Varadkar has been featured widely in news stories in which he's portrayed as the victim. This is at a time when the Taoiseach is being investigated in a serious criminal probe by the Gardaí. It would appear that certain media outlets are collaborating with Mr. Varadkar and his PR team to counter reports of that criminal investigation with propaganda and lies. And more Irish news, and Vera Twomey, the Cork mother, known for campaigning for access to medicinal cannabis for her daughter, has been forced to publicly plead once more with the Taoiseach Micheál Martin to assist her and other parents with affordable access to medicinal cannabis. Vera, whose daughter Ava lives with life-threatening seizures that can only be relieved with medicinal cannabis, has fought for years for access. Having won access to medicinal cannabis, Vera is now pleading with the Taoiseach to meet with her to discuss financing of this medicine, as currently parents must pay upfront and seek reimbursement for the medicinal cannabis later. Many parents can't afford this. Vera has been all but ignored by the Taoiseach, and there's an ongoing campaign on Twitter asking Micheál Martin to contact Vera Twomey using the hashtag #TalkToVera, and we encourage viewers to do that. In the north of Ireland, riots have continued for a fifth night, with gangs of youth from traditionally loyalist communities attacking public property and the police force in the north. Although the rioters do not appear to have any specific representatives or objectives, it is thought that the outcome of the Brexit agreement and what some see as a border down the Irish Sea is their main concern. Last night, a public bus was set alight by these youngsters, who appear to be directed by a small number of adults. Independent Republican councillor Gary Donnelly from Derry has said, and I quote, "Simple condemnation of tougher sanctions like plastic bullets are not the answer." He also said in a quotation, "Any sectarian response to sectarianism is wrong and is contrary to Irish republicanism." Staying with Ireland, and a cross-party Oireachtas Committee on Health has issued a report this week based on the latest scientific evidence, highlighting that vitamin D is a major factor in both preventing COVID-19 development and in fighting the infection itself. The 28-page report highlights the importance of vitamin D in the fight against the pandemic for the first time in Ireland. The report recommends the use of vitamin D as part of the COVID strategy into the future, but there is no guarantee that NPHET or the Irish government will pay heed to this report. The data showing the positive impact of vitamin D has been available for quite some time internationally, but it would appear the Irish government have been reluctant to explore any approaches to COVID-19 suppression other than mass vaccination programs. This news comes in the week that scientists, including Dr. Fauci from the United States, have publicly stated that people who have had COVID-19 and have fully recovered need not get vaccinated. In international news, and there has been a significant increase in the build-up of Ukrainian military personnel and hardware on the Ukrainian-Russian border over the last week or two, with tensions rising. Last week and over the weekend, Ukrainian forces villages in the autonomous region of and in and around Donbass. The US President Biden has this week committed a further $125 million in US military aid, otherwise known as sales of military hardware to the Ukraine. And indications are that conflict is more likely to occur now than it has been in over 5 years. And finally, staying with the US, and the Biden administration has applied sanctions on members of the Turkish government and government agencies. What happened?
Stephen, my screen is completely blank.
I was back here. Okay. Ankara have taken the decision to buy Russian military hardware, snubbing the US and indicating a closer relationship with Russia into the future. And we had some technical and sound issues for about 30 seconds there, folks. I do apologise about that. That's all the news that you won't see on TV this week. We're going to join Anna Kavanagh in a short while to look at more news stories that she feels should get more focus that have occurred over the last week. But before that, I'm delighted in many ways, but I'm also saddened to have to introduce three guests tonight. We've had two of these guests on before, Antoinette Keegan and Maurice McHugh, and we're joined by Maurice's wife, Phyllis McHugh, tonight as well, in relation to the Stardust disaster inquest. You may recall that we had Antoinette and Maurice on prior to Christmas talking about the fact that the inquest is going ahead and that they were quite happy that was announced. Also, at the time, we were told that there was over €8 million ring-fenced in the budget for this inquest into the Stardust disaster. Since that, we've discovered, and this is why we have Antoinette and Maurice and Phyllis on tonight, we've discovered that the government are not going to readily finance the legal representation of the families in this Stardust inquest. And the families are left again out on a limb, and more obstacles after 40 years have been placed in their way in terms of accessing justice for their family members that they lost because of this terrible fire all those years ago. So we have Antoinette, we have Maurice, and we have Phyllis on the show now, and we're just going to talk about the shock of finding out that the government are not going to finance the inquest in terms of their legal representation, and maybe what can be done about it as well. Hi, Antoinette, Phyllis, Maurice, are you guys there? Can you hear me? Okay, are you guys there? Can you unmute? Okay. So guys, we're just having some technical difficulties this week. It's unusual that we would go through this. Are you there, Anna?
Yes, Finbar, I can hear you, but I actually can't see you. So perhaps Stephen might be able to overcome that technical difficulty.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll work away anyway. Of the news stories that I covered on the introduction there, Anna, is there anything that stands out to you as?
Well, I suppose what really stands out for me is just, as you say, the third week in a row in which a Sunday paper has covered a story casting the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, in the role of victim. And as you say, in last story, they've actually had to retract that story. He didn't actually have to leave his home and move because of threats to him.
Okay. Okay, and just I'll stick talking to Anna for a minute or two till we get everybody back into the room. Yeah, but Anna, just in terms of that story, I recall a story, I think it was before Christmas, where Leo Varadkar had a final bash in his current home. that he was moving anyway, and it was nothing to do with being intimidated. It was he had made a decision to move home down south, and so where the story came from and how it suddenly rapidly went round all of the news agencies on Sunday is just amazing. It seems to have started out in one agency and then spread without anybody checking the background.
Yes, and it was actually trending on Twitter, and he was very much cast in the role of a victim of homophobic attacks. And I read some reports, where these attacks were being perpetrated by far right-wing conspiracy theorists. That's the usual fallback position that some mainstream journalists seem to have. Anybody that's to blame for anything that's happening is, a right-wing conspiracy theorist, and the usual throw in anti-mask, anti-lockdown then for good measure as well.
But it does bring into sharp focus, doesn't it, the relationship between media and politics, and how easy it is to take over the mechanics of journalism in Ireland and to use it to your advantage, as Varadkar clearly has done in a very successful way. Though those stories have all been pulled. It turns out that it's not true, and all of the agencies have pulled it. Though I was told that Joe Duffy on Liveline yesterday was continuing to give the story credence.
Yes, and I suppose this begs the question: what is there's a very fine line between propaganda and news, and it's very difficult for ordinary people to be able to discern whether it is real news or propaganda that they're being fed. And I know that, there's so much talk about fake news and fake news and fake news on social media. But the sad fact of the matter is that, we are sometimes fed fake news through mainstream media. I'm not one of these people, who would condemn RTE or condemn mainstream media. Mainstream media is not homogenous. It's made up of journalists of vastly different backgrounds, vastly different approaches, and vastly different ideas. And there are some journalists doing absolutely excellent investigative journalists and putting trustworthy news stories out there. And I suppose if I could single out one person.
But I think when it comes to the political coverage, that's where the problem is. And I think we have our guests back in the studio now, or back in the room. If you don't mind, I'm just going to turn over now to Antoinette Keegan and Maris and Phyllis McHugh. Are you there, guys?
Yes, we are.
Yeah, we're here.
We lost you there for a wee while. I do apologise about that. We don't normally have such technical issues. I'd like to thank you guys for joining us tonight, first of all. The last time I spoke with Maris and with Antoinette, I won't say there was gladness, but there was at least some relief that it appeared that this inquest was going to move forward, and it was going to happen in, we were told, early spring. Here we are moving towards summer, and that's not the same story now. Antoinette, can you tell us what's happened since the last time you were on the show?
You know what, right? Be honest with you, Finbar, right? Brendan O'Carroll couldn't even put this into his programme because the government is a comedy of errors here. They just don't know when to stop making fools out of us, right? And enough is enough, right? As far as we're concerned, right? The whole country is behind us, the world is behind us. 8.6 million was put aside, right, for the inquest, for the Stardust inquest. And all the legal teams, right, for all the other parties like Dublin Corporation, Dublin Fire Brigade, the owner, Butcherley's legal team, the Chief State Solicitor's Office, like every single party that's involved in this inquest have gotten their money. But we're left like the slaughter again, begging for legal aid, which is an absolute joke. Like, we're left like criminals. And now there's a thing in the legal aid that hasn't been changed. The regulations haven't been changed since 1995. So it leaves us a stumbling block now where we can't move anywhere because some of the families don't qualify for legal aid because they're over the limit. And some families do qualify for it. So in other words, right, the inquest is for the 48 victims. That's 45 families. So we can't go ahead with it because some of the families don't have the funding. And this is where we're hitting a hiccup, like a stumbling block again. Another obstacle put in our way because the government just tried to keep doing this all the time to us. Every time we think we're nearly there, right, we hit a concrete wall.
So let me get this right, okay? We're in the 40th anniversary this year, 2021, of the Stardust disaster when 48 young people lost their lives, hundreds of young people and middle-aged people were injured. Your mother and father personally fought for 35 years, and your mother died recently, so 40 years fighting for your mother to get some kind of an inquest and justice. And we have on our other programme spoken about the details of this, and we will go into it a little bit again and why there should be an inquest. But in the 40th anniversary, when you were promised over 8 million ring fenced for this inquest and promised this inquest, are you telling me that these guys are saying now you're getting no money from the Department of Justice for your legal representation, and yet they're telling you to apply for legal aid when legal aid doesn't cover inquests? Is that it in a nutshell?
That's it, yeah, that's it.
Okay, and it would make your blood boil. We had Jackie Fox on this show in relation to something in relation to Coco's Law and our daughter's loss of life through suicide because of bullying online. And, you know, the Department of Justice tried to hoodwink her as well. Even at the final stages when everything seemed to be achieved and done, they were still putting obstacles in Jackie Fox's way. And they seem to be doing the same with you and with Maris and Phyllis and everybody else. Maris and Phyllis,
yes.
What do you guys think about this?
We're very upset at it, about the whole situation. It's just ongoing. We knock back every time we try and move forward. Every time we think we're getting there, and when we think we're there, we're just knocked down again. Now, we're going to continue fighting. Of course we are. But, you know, Phyllis and I are getting, and we're not getting any younger. And we feel that we should get some cooperation from the government at this moment. They should just go ahead and say, yes, okay, release the funds. I can't see why we're discriminated against as regarding the funds, because everybody else has got them, like the Gardaí, Síochána, the Dublin Fire Brigade, their own government departments. They've all got their funds. But we seem to be the lower echelon of the whole thing altogether.
But so, isn't there a slap in the face when they're telling you to go and apply for legal aid when they know right well that legal aid doesn't cover this?
Of course they are, and they knew very well when they did it. It's another stalling tactic by them to send out these application forms for legal aid, as far as I'm concerned. And I won't be filling out the form, that's for sure. I mean, we should be treated equally as the Gardaí, Síochána, the Dublin Fire Brigade, and anyone else has been funded at this stage. That's just my opinion at this moment. And Phyllis and I are quite upset every time this comes up. And we've been helping out with Antoinette. Antoinette's been very good. And the whole family, the whole Keegan family are very good fighting this case. But for some reason or other, there's some blockage there. I have a funny feeling that there's something there that the government don't want opened. There could be a can of worms in there.
Yeah.
Government.
That maybe the fire brigade and the rest of them wouldn't really give a damn about, but the families would.
Yeah.
And is that why they don't want you guys having legal representation?
Well, the fire brigade or the Garda didn't lose any of their children, but we lost our only daughter, Caroline, and Antoinette lost 2 sisters. And I mean, it is up to us now to fight this case and get them to open up the inquest, not the Garda to open up the inquest, because they haven't lost anybody.
Yeah.
It is us that have lost our children, not the fire brigade or the Garda, Síochána, or anybody else. It's us that have lost our children. And we should be, you know, you should get this inquest open, you know, properly open, instead of all this carry on that's going on at the moment.
Yeah.
You know?
My understanding of it is that this does not require. So, if you were to get funded through the legal aid process, for example, it does not require a change of law, but only a change of the regulations around who is covered in terms of this. So, this could be done at the stroke of a pen by a minister, a change to make it easy for you to be able to access your funding for your legal representation. Would I be right in that assessment? I think I am.
That's correct. Yeah. The push of a button, the stroke of a pen, as you say, dot the I and stroke the T. It can all be sorted out like literally in 1 minute.
Yeah, yeah, and I think your legal representation is a very good solicitor, barrister, solicitor. I think Dara Mackin, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, and he was the one that was is keeping you posted about all of this kind of stuff.
Yes, he was. Yes.
It actually came up on the last Zoom meeting that we had on the 24th of March with the coroner, because she asked, was everyone ready to go? And our solicitor then said, we have a problem. And he said, I've already sent a letter to the Minister of Justice in relation to this, that the regulations haven't been changed for free legal aid since 1995. And the coroner was actually taken back on it. Like, it's just, it's actually degrading, like, the situation that we've been left in. Like, we are the victims here. We're not the criminals, but yet we're left fighting, right, again, looking for free legal aid. And
so the coroner, everybody was ready for this. The room was booked in the RDS, so the rooms and the space was booked. Money was laid out, and another hurdle.
Yeah, but this is what the state does on us all the time. It's just something. It's like 40 years of systematic abuse they've thrown at us, right? And nothing surprises us anymore because we're used to it. But we're not letting them away with it. Because I swore as my ma was dying in the sitting room in my house here with my brothers and sisters here, the one thing that she wanted was the inquest opened. And she is going to get her dying wish, and we promised her, right, that we will do it for her. And my father as well fought so hard as well. And both of them are together in heaven with their two daughters. But we're not going to give up. Morris and Phyllis is with us. A whole lot of families, we're all united, and united we stand. And we're going to make sure that they're not getting away with this. They've done enough on us over the years, and enough is enough.
I was going to ask you if this latest obstacle, this latest news, has deflated you or has cut you even more. But it sounds, Antoinette, to me as though it's put the fight back into you.
It has, yeah, Finbar. Like it's just something that happens on a constant, like, daily basis. Like we think we're nearly there, and then, as Morris said, an obstacle gets thrown in our way. Like each time that we say, right, okay, we're nearly there, and the inquest is going to happen in early spring. As you said, it could be early summer, and if they're saying early spring, is it going to be spring 21 or spring 22? Like they don't confirm nothing. Like I sent an email yesterday to the Minister of Justice, and I sent one to the Taoiseach, right, explaining the situation about the funding for the inquest and also about the historical costs, because there's money out from the historical costs, and that we wanted to get the inquest up running. Like the RDS is getting rent paid, right, and all the other legal team have been paid. So this is going to run into a substantial amount of money, but it's not on our part that it's running into a substantial amount of money. It's on the state's part for putting us in this situation again.
Yeah, and that's the truth of it, really, because it's not. You're not looking for tens of millions here.
No, all we want is the truth. We want to know what happened to our loved ones.
No, but even in terms of just trying to get the funding for your legal costs, it's not going to be tens of millions.
No, it's not. No.
You know, so, and it can be done at the stroke of a pen.
Yeah.
Just Phyllis and Morris, and maybe Phyllis. Yes. How is this affecting you? It sounds like it's put the wind into Antoinette to be able to fight on a bit more. How's it affecting you?
It is affecting us very badly because, I mean, she was our only child. And secondly, they should not have let them in that night. They were brought into a fire trap, and that should never have happened. Because it should not have been opened that night. He was told not to open it. Well, what did he do? Because it's money-making thing. So he opens up the Stardust, and 48 children died, and over 200 were injured.
And all of your lives have been changed forever.
Yes, of course it has. Of course it has. Sure. She was our only child. You know.
Wasn't the first insult way back when they tried to say that this was arson?
Yes,
And
exactly. And our children didn't go in to the Stardust that night to commit arson. Definitely not.
Mm.
You know.
And I think the evidence is all pointing to the fact that the building itself was just a fire trap.
The building itself was a fire trap, and they were allowed in. They were charged, I think it was £3 or whatever it was that night, and they were all killed. 48 of them were killed, and it's an absolute disgrace.
And isn't it amazing that the political cover-up started 40 years ago? And for some reason, even though the main players are no longer with us, even though the younger political players that are still with us can say they were only young fellas, and it's still, for some reason, they're doing everything to stop the families getting justice. Can any of you guys come up with any reason in your mind why, even after 40 years, they're trying to stop justice?
Well, I think there's something there. There's something amiss there, and they know something. There's something in the record somewhere that they're afraid that if it's opened, there'll be absolute disgraceful situation coming out of it altogether. And there could be trouble for the previous governments that were in power. And there's still some of them there that know all about this and didn't help it. Like years ago when the first tribunal was opened, we, Phyllis and I, thought in our naivety that we were going to come to the truth to get justice at that time. We were fools, weren't we? We were fooled.
We all believe.
And we are still being fooled by the government. If it was anybody else, I tell you, if it was any other country, I tell you, it'd be sorted out by now.
Mm. But I think ultimately, the truth is, you are going to win. Ultimately, it's just a shame that it has to take so long.
I hope we are going to win. I hope so.
We are going to win, and basically, Finbar, right, what they're doing is they're trying to fob us off, right, and hope, my mum passed away last July, that more parents will pass away and more families will give up, right, and they'll just all stop, but it'll never stop, because when this is all out and the truth comes out, it's going to be the biggest scandal in the history of the state. And Fianna Fáil covered it all up. Fianna Fáil are responsible, and Fianna Gael are behind it too.
Because it is really that clear link between politics and the owner of that building. And so politics and business in Ireland, it's a real reflection of the way things used to work. And it would appear the way things still work, because I still don't understand what skin the politicians of today have in this. It brings, in my mind, it brings more shame on them to continue behaving the way they're behaving now than any shame that could be brought on by the revelation of corruption in the past. There's more shame now. Antoinette, just to cover you with that question as well, do you see any reason, maybe in your mind, why they might be doing this?
Well, as you said there, Finbar, right, you just look at the situation in 1981. The crime scene was interfered with by politicians, by the Taoiseach, the then Taoiseach, by the guard. Everybody was allowed to walk on that, even though it was 48 killed, and that was a crime scene. So then, on the second day, right, we had the Taoiseach saying there's rumours going around that was arson. So, obviously they're all trying to cover their own, backs. They are, because they're all involved in this.
Yeah. From top to bottom, and it'll probably, it'll probably reveal to a degree the way things used to be, but I think the way things still are. Just in terms of what can be done about this, your solicitor, Mr. Mackin, is making all his efforts possible. But outside of what Mr. Mackin is doing, I spoke to Antoinette and Maris earlier and yesterday about the case with Jackie Fox and Coco's Law, and how we on this show had a campaign asking people to email the Minister of Justice, that was Helen McEntee at the time, politely in relation to a deception or an obstacle that the Minister had put in front of Jackie Fox. And that campaign actually worked. We ended up meeting the Minister for Justice and getting more than we had originally asked for. Would you guys into the future, not now, but if needs be into the near future, would you be willing to look at doing things like that to make this happen? Because I'm just concerned, as you said, Antoinette, people are getting older, you know, and I'm concerned this could go on for another few years, whereas a sharp, a smart shock to the shin by doing something like an online campaign might actually bring them round to their senses a lot quicker.
I would 100% agree with you there, Finbar, because incidentally speaking, it's not even about age. One of the campaigners that was like with us for a long, long time, Eugene Kelly, he was only 62. Like, he passed away last October, and he was like, his birthday was coming up on he passed away on the Wednesday, his birthday was the following Saturday. And like that, he wasn't sick or anything like that. Just like 1 minute he's outside the coroner's court on the 14th of October, and then the next thing, like, trying to contact him, and he passed away. Yeah. But like, it's the state, like, know what they're doing, right? So we would actually appreciate, like, on a show, like, for your listeners to actually write to the Minister of Justice and sort this mess out that we're left in.
Well, what we'll do is we'll talk about it behind the scenes more and do what we did with Jackie. And I want to try to link you in with Jackie as well. She's an amazing woman. And we'll come up with some kind of a plan in some way where we'll ask our viewers and maybe try to get other programs to ask their viewers over the period of a day or two to email the Minister's office. We won't do it yet. We'll talk to you guys and we'll work it out with you. We wouldn't do anything behind your back or off the bat without getting your full agreement on that. But it is something that you would be willing to look at to engage our viewers, because they did a great job with the Jackie Fox Coco's Law campaign, and I'm sure that they would want to help you guys as well.
Yeah, we'd really like that. We'd really appreciate it very much. Thanks very much, Finbar.
And Maris and Phyllis, how do you feel, just off the cuff, how would you feel about something like that?
Yes, that would be fabulous. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we agree with that.
We agree with it, because we are devastated over this whole thing that's going on at the moment. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's very, very upsetting.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I wouldn't be thanking me or our audience. We want to thank you for the 40 years that you've had to carry your burdens, but keep this fight up as well. And we want to thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this fight into the future. So I wouldn't be thanking us at all with regards to that. Guys, I'm gonna call it a day now, other than I want to introduce you to a wonderful independent journalist called Anna Kavanagh. And Anna was really, really annoyed yesterday when I spoke to her about what's happening with you guys and your denial of legal funds. So Anna, I think, just wanted to maybe speak to you and introduce herself and maybe ask you a question herself. Are you there, Anna?
Yes, Finbar, and hello, Antoinette and Phyllis and Maurice.
Thank you very much.
I just want to, I suppose, extend my deepest sympathy to you on the loss of your loved ones in that terrible fire. I actually remember it so well. I was actually a student in Dublin at the time, working in Dunnes Stores in Cornell's Court at the weekend, and I remember that Saturday morning going to work and hearing about the terrible tragedy. And I have followed the story closely over the years, and I suppose, just to establish some facts, Charlie Haughey was the Taoiseach of the day. Yes. And very, very shortly after the fire, he appointed a High Court Judge, Ronan Keane, to lead an inquiry into the cause of the fire. And before the end of the year, it was 1981, I think in November 1981, Ronan Keane presented his report, and his conclusion was
November 1982.
Sorry, November 1982. Yeah. The fire was in fact caused maliciously, and for that reason, then the insurance company didn't have to pay out compensation to the victims because it was malicious. And the family that owned the Stardust building were able to be compensated out of the state compensation fund for. There was a special fund for to compensate people that suffered malicious damage. Now, as I say, Ronan Keane, his wife Terry was a columnist at that time with the Sunday Independent. And in 1999, in an interview with Gay Byrne, Late Late Show, she admitted that she was having an affair with Charlie Haughey since 1972. So if we just stand back and just join up the pieces of the jigsaw, we have a situation where the Taoiseach of the day was having a secret affair with a journalist, and he appoints her husband to head up the Stardust inquiry. And of course, if we look to the situation today, that the son of Charlie Haughey is a member of the present government. So I've heard you say, you know, that there is a can of worms there, that when the truth eventually comes out, there will be a terrible scandal. And I suppose the state is actually stonewalling. Stonewalling and preventing the truth from coming out at this time, because it's going to be a major embarrassment to people that are still living, and people that have been involved, you know, in what happened over the years. So all I can say is that it is a horrendous denial of justice. But as you have so rightly said, the truth is going to come out in the end. It always does.
That's right.
Antoinette, you wanted to come in there for a second?
No, as I said, Finbar, it's going to be the biggest disaster. It's the biggest disaster in the history of the state. But when the truth does come out, it's going to be the biggest scandal in the history of the state. Now, at the time when the Ronan Keane was appointed, we didn't know that there was a connection with the Taoiseach having an affair with his wife. That only came out.
And the Taoiseach was good friends with Butterley, and Butterley was donating money to Fianna Fáil.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
There is high connections in high places, and it's like,
I suppose Anna is right in the sense that Fianna Fáil are back in government. They're down at 11%, if not less, in the polls, and the last thing they need is more scandal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right there.
Yeah. Guys, listen, I'm really glad that you joined me tonight. I wish you had been joining me to say that you were happy with the inquest and it was moving forward. You will be on the show saying that someday. I promise you, you will. Hopefully, I'm going to have you on in the next few weeks. I speak to your legal people in relation to having an online campaign. And again, once more, thanks for joining us. Maris, Phyllis, Antoinette, do you want to finish up with any final comments?
I'll let Phyllis have more.
It was true, very true. There was a connection between the owners of the Stardust and the government of Fianna Fáil party.
Butterleys.
Some there years ago, where they had a thing called Taka. You remember Taka?
Rings a bell. Explain it to me, Maris.
The fundraiser raised by a very prominent financial guy, right? And he set it up, and there was 1,000 members. You had to be invited to attend, and it was €100 membership at that time, or sorry, £100 at that time.
Good woman, Phyllis.
They would hold dinners. And they would charge €100 or £100 a head for the dinner. So you could have 12 guests there. So you could imagine the amount of money was raised. And in the memoirs that was printed by the Butterley, he said that you had to be a member of this, and he was amazed at the number of people that were there at these dinners. And he said, well, mostly building contractors and developers.
Yeah.
And he
the Galway tent, essentially.
Yeah. So there's connection. So, sorry, Phyllis.
No, but like, why take it out on us people? You know, I mean, they want to do the bad things. Why take it out on us? We don't want any bad things done on us.
Yeah.
We've enough bad things done on us now at the moment. You know.
You know something, Phyllis? You couldn't have said that more simply and just more purely. It's just, you're so damn right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, it's just very, very, very unfair, like, to all of us, you know. And, like, we're getting on now in life, and, well, I'm very pleased. I'm very healthy, thank God. And Morris is very healthy. But, you know, I mean, it's very unfair to us, too, you know, having to go through all this, you know.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're going to have you back on the show soon, hopefully to launch an internet campaign. In the meantime, you guys stay safe, and I'll be speaking to you. I'll give you a buzz over the next day or two.
Okay, thank you for having us on tonight.
Yeah, thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Finbar. Thank
No
you, Anne.
problem. And listen, thanks for putting up with our technical difficulties at the
No,
beginning.
that's
I
okay.
apologise for that.
That's okay. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah. All the
Right.
Okay,
best.
folks.
Yes, thank you.
Stay safe.
Bye.
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 Bye, Antoinette.
Bye,
Bye.
Antoinette.
Bye, fellas. Bye, Anna. Bye, Stephen.
Well, just now, folks, we are co-hosting from now on. This is no longer just Finbar Markey show. It's Finbar Markey and Anna Kavanagh show. Anna is an independent journalist. She was running her own or hosting her own show called Centre Ground on the Irish Inquiry. But we've decided that we get on so well, we're going to merge our shows, Double Down and Centre Ground, into one show called Double Down. Anna wants to focus in every week on a few news stories that she feels deserve to be highlighted a lot more than they are, and to go into a little bit more detail with those news stories. So Anna, I'm going to give you the floor. Fire away and good luck.
Thank you, Finbar. And I have to say that I am really being taken out of my comfort zone. You know, I was just so used to just doing the interviews, and this is my very first time to do a news review. And so I've put together some items that made the news and in some cases didn't make the news in the last week. And just, I suppose, what I would like to do is to join the dots then at the end and to stand back and see the bigger picture. So if we cast our minds back to last Sunday morning, it was, of course, Easter Sunday. And what did not make the news was the fact that Father PJ Hughes, the parish priest of Mullaghorn Parish in County Cavan, said Mass at 6:30 and at 10:30 in the parish church in Mullaghorn that was attended by 35 people at the 6:30 Mass, and I'm not sure how many people attended second Mass. And Father Hughes made the news because he has been levied a €500 fine for saying Mass with the doors open and allowing people into the church during Mass. And he has said that he will continue to say Mass in spite of this threat of being fined, and he is refusing to pay the fine, and he said that he is prepared to go to jail. I spoke to Father Hughes a number of months ago when this first made the news headlines, and he is a very quiet man, and he found it very, very difficult dealing with the fact that he was kind of thrown into the mainstream media spotlight, and he found it really, really difficult. But he is, you know, a very, very dedicated priest, and a priest that's very much an old style priest who feels that he has a calling to minister to his flock, as it were. And the sad fact of the matter is that normally the Gardaí are not to be found out to the countryside in rural Ireland. If you phone for a guard, if you've been robbed, you could be waiting for hours, as I was one time. But in the case of Mullaghorn, the guards are patrolling the narrow country roads around Mullaghorn night and day. A man was recently stopped at 4 o'clock in the morning. Now, he did have a legitimate reason to be travelling, and he was stopped and asked to give an account of his movements by the Gardaí, and he was really taken aback by the fact that the guards were patrolling the roads in the middle of the night. I suppose this is a clampdown on our religious freedom, and on Sunday last, the 105th anniversary of the Easter 1916 Rising was commemorated at the GPO, and a number of dignitaries, including the Taoiseach and the Lord Mayor of Dublin, were in attendance. The proclamation was read out by Captain Marie Carrigy. Now, as it happens, Captain Carrigy comes from Ballinallee, which is just a few miles from Father Hughes's parish in Mulhorn. Now, Captain Carrigy has served Ireland with distinction. She has done 3 tours, 3 UN peacekeeping tours in the Lebanon, on the Golan Heights, and in the Congo. So she has an exemplary record, and she is, I suppose, the people in Longford feel very, very honoured and feel very proud to have her among them. Now, she read out the proclamation, and of course we all know that the proclamation called for religious freedoms and freedom of movement and our liberties. The exact quote is religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens. And the irony is that a few hours later, those civil liberties were actually denied to a small number of people who came into O'Connell Street. And I suppose what I found most shocking was a photograph that was published by Gript Media on Monday, and it was a photograph of a young girl. She's handcuffed, and she is in an arm lock, and she was one of 8 people arrested in O'Connell Street on Easter Sunday afternoon. And I just found that image, and I still do find that image very, very, very shocking. So on the one hand, we have the honour of Captain Carrigy from Óglaigh na HÉireann reading out the proclamation, and then later on in the afternoon, this is the civil liberties of a young girl being denied by An Garda Síochána. And I just want to show you now a short video clip. Stephen is from the Irish Inquiry, and he went to O'Connell Street, and he was within his 5K. He didn't have any intention of live streaming or anything like that, but he found himself in a situation where he had to live stream. So we'll have a look now at that video.
Garda, can I leave?
Can't leave until we verify your details.
Hang on, stop for a second. What's your purpose of being in town today?
I'm just getting some fresh air and some sunshine, Garda.
Hang on, stop for a second.
Am I free to leave?
Not right now, no. I want to ask what your purpose of town is.
Am I under arrest?
Not right now.
Your colleagues were talking to me over there. They verified all my details.
They verified all the details. Well, I don't know you, so what's your name? I'm asking you who you are.
You're asking my details, is it?
Yeah.
If you want to ask your colleagues up there.
I'm not asking my colleagues.
You're standing very close to me, Garda.
Yeah, because you're refusing to give us your details.
No, I'm not refusing. Stephen Kerr is my name.
Okay, have you any photo ID to
I do,
confirm that, Steve? Mr. Kerr, you walk, please.
I am walking, Garda.
Yeah, okay. Under Section 8, leave the area, please. All right?
I'm leaving, Garda. Please,
leave the area.
Please don't arrest me. I'm leaving, as you can see.
No one's arresting you, Mr. Kerr.
Okay.
All right.
You're taking advice, so thank you.
No one's arresting you, Mr. Kerr. All right.
How far are you going to follow me?
No, we're not. We're just actually, if you're a help here because you're walking backwards. You wouldn't like to trip up now, would you?
Okay, I'm actually quite worried now that I'm going to get arrested here, to be honest, because I don't know why they're following me. Garda, is everything okay? Are you following me? But I was just asking people online here, like, what area exactly? Where can I go? Where will you allow me? Sorry?
The O'Connell Street area and the environs, alright?
To O'Connell Street.
3187, you've been asked to leave the area.
Yeah.
3180 will be arrested, alright?
I'll leave O'Connell Street, correct?
And environs.
The what?
Environs. ENVIRONS.
What the hell is that? Sorry, excuse my ignorance.
The area around any side streets and kind of the immediate area around.
Is there a certain distance like I should go?
Just the environs, alright?
But that's
again,
I mean...
if you don't leave right now, you will be arrested on 3180.
Okay, well look, I'll go, but I mean, I'm going to go to the end of the street here. Say again?
You're not going. Every time we stop, you stop.
But like, you followed me like 2 blocks.
Not really, it's on the beach.
You followed, yeah, you followed me 2 blocks.
If you're refusing to leave, you will be arrested.
Okay, Garda.
You've been watching Stephen from the Irish Inquiry there on O'Connell Street on Easter Sunday 2021. And as a retired history teacher, I can see the historical significance in that video footage. In years to come, we will look back on that and we will see it as a primary source, a testament to what went on O'Connell Street on Easter Sunday 2021. And it begs the question, is this a taste of what is to come? Or will we look back on this as just a temporary lapse of our civil liberties? And I suppose the other thing is that Stephen was actually within his 5K, and he was asked to leave the street and to move on. So it begs the question, on what grounds did the Gardaí have to ask him to leave the street, because he wasn't doing anything illegal? And I suppose if we look at what is actually happening, this time last year, we actually handed over our civil liberties, and it looks like our civil liberties are now going to be handed back to us on condition that we are vaccinated and that we carry a COVID vaccine passport. And on Easter Monday, the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, posted a video to social media saying that additional freedoms will be granted to people who are vaccinated. And that was followed then later in the day by a statement from the president of the GA saying that he was open to the idea of vaccine passports if it meant a return of matches. And moving on to today, the Minister for Health, Stephen Donnelly, was interviewed this morning by Pat Kenny on News Talk, and he said that the fully vaccinated should be given what he terms vaccine bonuses. And he, like Leo Varadkar, cites what is actually happening in Israel, where people who are vaccinated carry a vaccine passport, and they are then allowed entry to events like concerts. So, as I say, this time last year, we handed over our civil liberties to the government, and now those civil liberties are being returned to us on conditions. Moving on now to the hot topic of face masks, and I don't think there has been anything as controversial as face masks, and the term an anti-masker has been used by some mainstream journalists and by bullies on social media to shut down any debate or discussion that goes against the prevailing narrative. You know, an anti-masker right-wing conspiracy theorist is de rigueur in shutting down valid discussion and debate on what is actually happening at the moment. And I wonder if that term is going to be able to be used so freely now, given that there were two developments this week in relation to face masks. The first occurred in Canada, where the Canadian government has actually issued a recall for all face masks containing graphene, because there is a possible danger that it could be carcinogenic. So a total ban on all face masks containing graphene. And Eco-Textile is the leading magazine in the world for the clothing and textile trade. And they published a report this week. Two of the leading chemists in the textile trade in Germany have both come out and said that their research shows that the chemicals that are used in the treatment of the face masks are actually carcinogenic. And they say that the danger posed to children and young people wearing these chemically treated face masks is a greater threat to their health than the danger that's posed to them by COVID. They also say that cloth masks or masks that are made out of material, people are putting them into their pockets. They have become a breeding ground for germs, and also the abrasion of the cloth actually is creating microfibers, and these can be inhaled into the lungs and can also be a health hazard. So they have called for further research to be carried out into the dangers posed by the wearing of face masks. They said that face masks were never designed to be worn long term, and under the conditions that they are currently being worn. So I suppose that moves us on then to a story that was carried by last Sunday's UK Times, the Sunday Times, and it is the response that the Minister for Children, Roderick O'Gorman, got to a letter that he wrote to GSK, asking them to provide reparations for children who were used as guinea pigs in the mother and baby homes over the decades. And the minister received a response from GSK saying that they will not be providing reparations for these children. And later on in the week, Aontaithe leader Peadar Tóibín, under Freedom of Information, received a tranche of emails that had been sent to the Taoiseach Micheál Martin in the wake of the publication of the mother and baby home reports. And the Taoiseach Micheál Martin had promised that legislation was going to be fast-tracked to enable people who have been adopted to be given access to their birth certs. But there has now been a delay put on that legislation, and Peadar Tóibín has come out and made a very, very strong statement on the lack of justice for the mother and baby home survivors, and the refusal of the government to grant them access to their birth records. One of the emails, and I'm going to read it now, one of the emails sent to the Taoiseach said, "I am writing this with the tears streaming down my face, and I've had to stop and start many times just to get to the point. Can you imagine, Taoiseach, if someone clicked their fingers and you had no name, no mother, no father, no history, no relations, no memories, no background, but somebody had it in their gift to fill in at least some of these blanks. There are thousands of us today like that, but at least I am able to write this, unlike so many others." So just heartbreaking, really, really heartbreaking email to the Taoiseach from a mother and baby home, a survivor of a mother and baby home. And finally, I suppose perhaps some answers to why there is so much injustice and why the country is in the state that it's in. The answers were put forward in the last week by two women. First of all, Sarah McInerney appeared on the Late Late Show, and she said that her abiding memory of the last year was men standing at podiums. and that actually trended on Twitter. And then on Sunday, in an interview with the Sunday Independent, Una Muldoon, who is a professor and a psychologist at the University of Limerick, said that, suggested that the reason why the country is in the state that it's in is because the decisions are being made by middle-aged, middle-class white men who are based in Dublin, men who are well educated, and that women and members from ethnic minorities are being left out of the loop. And she said that there is a situation going on at the moment. I suppose the term that could be used for it is groupthink, and it's the term that she used. And she explained how at the height of the Celtic Tiger, all of the decision making was being made by a small select group of people, and everybody else then fell into line. And she says that what is actually happening at the moment is a classic example of groupthink. And also on Sunday morning, she was the guest of Damien O'Reilly on RTE Radio 1. Damien was standing in for Brendan O'Connor. And in her interview with Damien O'Reilly, she said that as a psychologist, coercion does not work if you want to get people to embrace the behaviours that are necessary for the control of COVID, and I suppose for good public health. What works is that if you can get buy-in, you can convince people that the actions that they're taking will protect themselves, their loved ones, and protect others. And she said that levying fines on people is actually having the opposite effect. And she noted that more than half of the fines levied to date by the Gardaí have been levied on young people aged between 18 and 25. And she said that that is going to, I suppose, as it were, it's not going to work. That really what you're doing is you're getting young people's back up, and they will not embrace the public health measures that are necessary. So I suppose if we stand back now and join up all the dots, the 1916 proclamation called for religious freedom and civil liberties. But 105 years onwards, we have neither religious freedom nor civil liberties. And I suppose that is probably down to the fact that the country is being run by middle-aged, middle-class, educated men who are based in Dublin. And if I could add to that, that there is no justice. We've seen in the interview with Antoinette and Morris and Phyllis that there is a total denial of justice. So I suppose if we are to move towards a country going forward where there is justice, where there is religious freedom, where there is civil liberty, the women of Ireland, Manana Heron, need to stand up and be counted. So I will just leave it at that.
Thank you, Anna. I don't think I could argue with anything there, other than to say that I have a sneaking suspicion that if we brought in if there was an equal parity in terms of numbers of women and members of minorities, that if the attitude and the education system of those people doesn't change, then we're just going to have the same situation. And whether it's a woman, whether it's someone of a different tone of skin colour, whether it's somebody of a different religion who's hitting me across the head with a club, I don't think I'll care about their background it's the fact that they're hitting me across the head with a club is what would interest me most.
Can I pick up on
Anna,
that point?
Yeah, please do, Anna. Please do.
Professor Muldoon pointed out that the decisions that are being made by these men, that women think differently and they have a different approach. And she actually cited the example of the debacle over children's shoes, that the government has been proclaiming all along that children's shoes were not an essential item. And you actually had a situation where the Minister for Finance, Paschal Donoghue, actually went on RTE radio and defended the prohibition on the sale of children's shoes. And it was only then when there was a massive outcry when a paediatrician, a Cork-based paediatrician, came out on Twitter and said that children were presenting to her with their feet in a dreadful state, that permanent damage was being done to the children's feet because they were not able to access proper footwear. And it was on foot of that then that the Taoiseach made a U-turn later on the day, following on from Paschal Donoghue's defence of the restrictions. There was a U-turn made on it, and then it was declared that the ban on the sale of children's shoes could be lifted. And I suppose what Professor Muldoon said in her interview was that if women were more represented at the, were more represented in the decision-making process, there would not have been a ban on children's shoes in the first place.
I think if women on the ground, but I'll just say the names: Mary Harney, Regina Doherty, I can go on and on. So it's not about just women, it's about the quality of the women, I think, and the belief system that those women have as well. There's plenty of fathers, working class fathers, who would equally, I think almost all working class fathers would see kids' shoes as just as important as the mothers would as well. I don't want to bear on that point too much, Anna. I would like to just go back to your story about Stephen Kerr, the producer on the Irish Inquiry and one of the network controller, who seems to be over the last few weeks coming across a lot of intimidation from An Gardaí Síochána, and you showed a video in your segment there. But there was another video from the previous week where Stephen underwent similar treatment, and he had showed them his journalist union card and things like that. And it's quite clear that there's an interference with the process of citizens' journalism and reporting here. And it's really worrying, and the sneeriness and the smart aleckness of members of the Gardaí in some of those videos, it just made me think, is this what Maurice McCabe had to put up with when he went to work as well, with young Gardaí making fun of him and being sneery and jeery and intimidating towards him too? There just seems to be some connection there for me, that when I saw the way Stephen was being treated, that it just reminded me of Maurice McCabe and other similar cases as well. Did that stand out at all to you, Anna?
Well, I didn't actually look at it in that light. I just saw it as a denial of civil liberties.
Yeah.
And I suppose what I find alarming is the attempt that is being made to shut up and close down journalists. And there is actually a case before the courts at the moment involving a journalist who took video footage at the scene of the eviction in Strokestown, and he actually had to hand over his phone containing the video footage to the Gardaí. He lost his High Court case, and that is now being appealed. So what I found particularly shocking was that the silence of other journalists, because this is something that affects them. You know, the High Court judge said that there was no such thing as journalist privilege. And if there's no such thing then as journalist privilege, it means then that any journalist on any mission can be, I suppose, forced by the Gardaí to hand over, any
sources,
any material that they have. Emmett Corcoran is actually the journalist in question, and I was just very, very shocked that that the mainstream journalists have actually, I suppose, remained very silent about this major issue that goes right to the heart of journalism. And you see, journalism is the fourth estate. The function of journalists and the function of media is to hold power to account. So I suppose you have what they call four estates. The first three are the cabinet and the Dáil and the judiciary, and then the fourth is the journalists, and their function is to hold the other three to account, and that's what is needed in a democracy if it's to function properly. But if journalists are being silenced, it means then that the other three are not being held to account. And that is basically what is actually happening there on the street with Stephen. As a journalist, he is holding power to account, and he is effectively been shut down. And,
well, we know that ultimately he's not being shut down, because he is, in his very unique and polite and gentle way, he is persisting in getting these stories out. And just to be clear, when you're reporting on stuff, Anna, when the Irish Inquiry is reporting on the matter of COVID, and on the occasions when we mention COVID here, we're not coming out with conspiracy theories that COVID doesn't exist and things like that. But we are stating that there are different opinions and scientific databases and information, but also there's different approaches around the world that are official, that are scientifically based, but that are not being reported here in Ireland, where there seems to be just a focus on vaccinations and very, very radical and some would say extreme lockdown measures. So what you're doing, what Stephen's doing, what we're all doing is just trying to introduce some light through the cracks of what seems to be a developing hegemony. For instance, we have heard over the last few days that the United States will not be introducing vaccine passports, and also that the United States are accepting, and Dr. Fauci said the other day, we had it on our news story earlier, that in fact people who have already had the virus and have fully overcome the virus do not have to be vaccinated, as they're as protected as the most effective vaccine itself. We also heard from the UK that if they progress with a vaccine passport, that people who have already had the virus and have overcome it will be able to get a vaccine passport without being vaccinated. So there are chinks of light. We've also heard reports over the last week in terms of, and you reported it too, Anna, the rapid antigen tests and how impactful and how useful they are. So the news is starting to get into Ireland, but there does seem to be a pushback. The government are intent on 100% vaccination coverage at the moment. But in reality, all other governments and states around the world are listening to the science and looking at the practicality of it, and they're saying that our approach has to be multifaceted. We can't just be having lockdowns and 100% population vaccinated. It's not going to work that way. So that's what we're trying to do. Would you agree that that's the message that we're trying to bring to Ireland at the moment, Anna?
Yes, I suppose in my particular case, what I'm very conscious of is that mainstream media is just giving one side of the narrative. And I suppose I see my role as a citizen journalist to give the other side of the narrative. So I suppose people accuse me of being very, very one-sided and very biased in my reporting and in my presentation of news. And I completely agree. But I make no apologies for it. And I know that we both agreed earlier on today when we were chatting that Robert Fisk said that we must always come down on the side of the underdog.
Yeah, the victims, yeah.
The victims, yeah. So, that great journalist, Robert Fisk, So, yeah, I suppose that's,
That's
how
where
I see
we're
myself.
at. Yeah.
That's how I see myself, coming down on the side of the victim.
And we're way over time tonight. So would you have any final words for this week for our viewers?
Would I have, I suppose I would like to leave our viewers with a question. First of all, I would like to thank the Irish Inquiry for making this broadcast possible. A lot of work goes on behind the scene. There are a team of people in Dublin tonight making this live stream possible, and just like to thank them. And I'd like to thank you, our viewers, for tuning our way, because without you, then we're talking to ourselves. And I suppose I'd like to leave you with a question. Having handed over our civil liberties this time last year, how do we get them back unconditionally? That is, how do we get them back without conditions attached?
It's a very good question, Anna. I'd like to thank the production team as well, Steve, Danny, and everybody else in the team. I'd like to thank Anna Kavanagh, my co-host, Antoinette Keegan, Maris and Phyllis McHugh from the Stardust Family Campaign. And I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight. Like the show if you can, please. Give it a share out there. Let's build up this independent media and let's influence Ireland in a fair and a just way. I've been your host, Finbar Markey, and your co-host, Anna Kavanagh. Thanks for watching, and join us next week at Thursday at 9 p.m. on the Irish Inquiry. See you then, folks.